Hello and welcome to the World Changemaker podcast, where we have engaging conversations with everyone from entrepreneurs to advocates. I'm your host, Cinnamon Alvarez. Be ready to get inspired because our guest today is going to share their story, insights, and golden nuggets with us about how they're making a meaningful difference in people's lives and in our communities. If you like what you hear today, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And while you're there, leave us a review. Hello and welcome. Welcome, Amparo, our special guest. And those of you listening, this is the World Changemaker podcast, where my intention for today is to inspire you all so that you can confidently raise your impact in the world. That's what we do at World Changemaker, along with my fellow co-founders, Desiree Musselman and Darlene Hawley. That's what we're all about, is supporting people making a difference in the world. So today I am meeting with Amparo Vazquez, who is amazing. I already know a lot about her, but I would like you to introduce yourself, if you don't mind. First, just tell a little summary of what you do professionally. Personally, you can chime in some of those things too.
Hi everyone, very nice to meet everybody. Founder of two companies, Astekah and BIPOC-CX. I established both, or the vision of them, I established both last year, as I was seeing sort of a ramp up of a lot of very disconcerting and scary things that were happening across the nation, across the world. And I was seeing that marginalized people were becoming even more so placed in states of danger and lack of safety. So I'm a woman of color, I'm a Latina. I'm very passionate about protecting other people, and I have been my entire life. So I just got really fired up. Like, I have to do something about this. Those of us who have this calling within them, we have to do something about this. So I created, I just started to create. And so that's what Astekah and BIPOC-CX came from, this desire to be of service.
That's amazing. So you are a coach, right? You have some training curriculum. And so
Yes.
my first question is that if you have the world look like what you want it to look like your vision, what, like, describe that to us. What does it look like? What is
God,
the dream world?
love this question.
Oh, good.
It would be a world of a lot more safety and joy and a lot more feeling of worthiness. So I just found out a term last year that really speaks to this thing that's very strongly present within me. It's called compersion. It's like the opposite of jealousy, where you feel a lot of joy in seeing other people experience joy. I get so much joy from seeing other people experience safety and joy and passion and feeling like they're living their purpose. I get so much joy from that. And I have a huge capacity for that level of joy, for that type of joy. So that is my vision of the earth.
What
It's
a beautiful gift. I mean, I have chills all over. Imagine a world where people really got fed from other people experiencing joy. I think instead of being on defense, right, that we would be so much more generous and supportive of each other. That's so amazing. When did you know this about yourself? Like, what?
I've long known it about myself. I just finally found a term for it last year, which was really great. And ever since I was a little girl, so I grew up in the hood. I grew up in a state of a lot of different forms of deprivation, right? From physical to spiritual to emotional to mental. But when I was very little, I still cared very deeply about my family, my community, the world. And I was always very a little different from everyone else.
Aren't we
I,
all though?
yeah,
I believe we all have this, like, I don't belong thing.
yeah, right. The sort of the black sheeps of the family and the
Mhm.
community. My black sheepness came in part from having easier access to joy than I could see around me. And I could also tell that I experienced a lot of joy from community, from being of service, from seeing other people feeling happy. And so it's been my whole life. I just finally have a
Really?
turn. Mhm.
So then, a similar question though, what event, or was there an event or an idea that came to mind that had you start your businesses?
Yeah, great questions. It's been an accumulation. These are not my first businesses. It's actually my second and third business. But the big catalyzing event was actually um, having had the experience of thinking that I was safe after a lifetime of trying to seek safety, right? as a marginalized person, it's not the necessarily the easiest to come by safety. So you have to be really intentional about trying to seek that inside of yourself and outside of yourself. So I thought that I had found safe spaces, and it turns out that I wasn't experiencing the level of safety that I thought that I was. Not only was I not experiencing the level of safety that I thought I had arisen to, but I was noticing that there were very uncomfortable similarities between lack of safety inside of organizations, inside of work cultures, inside of larger spaces like that, and then what one experiences inside of abusive one-on-one situations. I'm also an abuse survivor of covert narcissistic abuse. So I was noticing a lot of similarities between the two and noticing similar impact. And again, I care very deeply about people. I care very, very deeply about their safety, about their well-being. And so when I see someone being harmed or just their life force deteriorating because of something that they're experiencing, I feel it inside of myself. And so I saw lack of safety where I thought there was safety. I saw deterioration of safety across the nation, right, with our rights being eroded. I saw a rise of a lot of tension and violence and isolation, a lot of really uncomfortable experiences that individually would be a lot for the human being to take on, but they were all happening at the same time, and books being banned and all sorts of other stuff, right? There was just so much layoffs, all sorts of stuff that was happening. And it was all of that that sort of kicked up this desire to actually create again and create something that would be of service and create something that would help people to pull out some of the training that we receive as just socialized human beings to be small, to be silent, to second guess ourselves, to sort of keep ourselves in the background of our own lives, let alone the platform of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we need a whole new world.
So, and that's how I interpreted when I started to get to know you, that for you, I feel like you're making this call to action. You're calling people forward. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
The world is so beautiful in so many ways, right? But we also see a lot of corruption. We also see a lot of egotistical leadership. We also see a lot of decision making that's based off of what's best for the self or what's best for this small group of people or what brings about the most money without even caring to challenge the impact that that has. And I have so much just strong energy around that. It's unsustainable for an individual person, let alone us as a humanity having gone through this generation after generation after generation after generation. So we need new leaders. We need new systems. We need new organizations. We need whole new ways of relating to ourselves and to each other. We need new norms. We need to reassess how we think about ourselves as individual people, as whole human beings, our place in the world and the world at large, and start to treat ourselves differently, different from how we're trained to treat ourselves, and treat each other differently as well.
It's so interesting. So I'm wondering if you're willing to share some like golden nuggets with me and with our audience too. And I'll speak for myself. I think that I am generally, I'm very much like you. Like as far as seeing people go after something that is going to make a difference for themselves and for others, I can celebrate that all day long. I feel like I'm also very sensitive to people's emotions. But I'm overall, like most people would think that I'm one of the happiest people they know. Okay. But there's a lot of negativity. And it seems to me like more people are being defensive. What, if any, if you could, positive things could we do to bring out the greatness in people versus like it kind of like the idea of calling out versus calling in. I think we're so fast to criticize, which can be not a positive generative space. So what could we do to create more beauty and love for each other?
I love your questions, by the way. You ask fantastic.
This is not scripted. This is just genuine. Like this is my
Tell.
obsession. I was just having this conversation at lunch. Like I am obsessed. So
I
what
love your
do
questions. I
you
ask them all the
do?
time too. Yeah. So a couple of things. One is everything starts internally before it extends externally, right? Internal changes always precede the external. And the external world is very much a manifestation of how we treat ourselves, which in and of itself is it's how we've been trained to treat ourselves, right? We've been trained to see ourselves not as whole human beings. We've been trained to see ourselves as things whose value depends on the production quality, right? So this meaning like we are as good as what we're able to create, as what we're able to produce, right? We are not whole human beings. Um we are what's the word? Not immature, unworthy. We're
Oh,
unworthy.
yeah.
We require all these external things to make ourselves feel worthy, and we always have to chase after the approval of some being or entity that is somehow above us, and the goalpost is always changing, and our definition of worthiness is always changing, and we can never achieve it. We can never feel peace. And also, don't ever stop and rest because how dare you? Then you're being a lazy person. Just keep going and run yourself into the ground. And if you do, that's your fault, right?
Mhm.
So we're trained to have such a very violent relationship with ourselves. If we really place ourselves out of this context and we think about ourselves telling that to another human being or even an animal, it's very unkind to have that type of relationship with ourselves. So it starts by having the gall to take moments of silence, of space, of reflection, and just inhabiting your body in and of itself. That by itself is so deeply uncomfortable for people because then you start to be able to hear all the thoughts that you tell yourself, right? That are so mean towards yourself. And then you start challenging these things. You start challenging these thoughts. You start challenging these ideas that circulate all around yourself that you're unworthy, that you're this, that you're that, that you're this and you're that. You start challenging it. And you start challenging it by understanding that it's all essentially brainwash, right? It's the repetition of the same message over and over
Programming.
and over
Yeah.
again. Programming. That's all it is. So what do you do to change out the programming? You replace it. How do you replace it? You work with your mind, with your body, not against it. And your mind needs a lot of evidence to be convinced of something, and that's okay. So you overwhelm it with a lot of evidence of what it is that you're trying to convince it. And because you're giving your brain an assignment of, hey, convince me of this, it's going to start to find evidence of that.
And is
And
that some of the work you do when you coach with people? Is you have, or do you reflect back? Do you have a system? Like,
yeah.
yeah.
I don't mean to keep interrupting you.
And I could talk about this all day long. What I love, Amparo, is that I actually wrote my own book called Generating Your Own Happiness. So it's not necessarily that people listening that this is brand new information, like you might call it a turnaround. I call it a mental renovation. Um, there's so many different authors that talk about the self-talk, but what I love is that the way you're describing it is different than my normal language, right? It's the different than how I normally associate with it. So it's already, I want to tell you, it's already really empowering because it's not like new information. I've geeked out on this for years. So that's part of why I'm so curious of what your unique, I think that we're all gifts. So what's your approach in having people to be able to really resonate and see, and I call it like mindfulness, to be aware of that monkey chatter and then
Yes.
turn that around in a powerful way? What's your approach?
Yeah. So the reason why my approach is a little bit different is because I am a woman of color who's experienced a lot of different forms of oppression and abuse, right? And so I have the lived experience of having had to rewire my brain from very, very, very heavy spaces, from
Mm.
individual programming, but also collective programming, right? It's I would argue it's a little bit different when you have that many forms of influence that you're trying to pull out of your mind, pull out of your psyche. And so what I do is I have a multi-pronged approach, right? I help people to be able to see what we normally can't see because it's so normalized, right? Just to give you a really quick example of something that I cite all the time, burnout. Burnout is this normal thing, and in some ways it's even glamorized. You know what burnout actually
Guilty, guilty. Mhm.
Burnout is actually the impact of exploitation and self-exploitation. That's what it actually is. What does it actually cause? Huge health issues that we're again in a constant state of normalizing and saying, oh, it's because of age, it's because of stresses. No, that's not how we're supposed to live. That's not how we're biologically wired. We're treating ourselves like things, like objects, not like human beings, right? So I help them to be able to see through the smoke screen of societal gaslighting. That's really what it is, right?
Mhm.
And then I help them to be able to understand the impact to them and to their communities, because we're not just individuals, we come from groups, right? And the group affects the individual and the individual affects the group, and it goes beyond just this generation, right? So seeking to I seek to help them to understand the impact on them, their communities, their ancestral lines, right? To understand that part of this whole thing is convincing you of not just your lack of worthiness, but your ancestral lack of worthiness, right? So it goes far beyond just this generation. And then reprogramming. And then after or during and after the reprogramming, it's okay, how do you create something entirely new? From
Fresh, like blank slate, clean canvas.
Yeah, how do you reality hop? How do you energetically hop and create from this new foundation that you have to keep doing, right? So you have to keep creating the new foundation, new foundation, new foundation, new foundation, new foundation, and then you keep going from there.
Thank you so much. So of course, I want to just give everybody everything on a silver platter. And we
Yeah.
don't have time. I promise to keep these short because out of respect for your time and our listeners' time. And I could talk to you forever. But if you could just give like anyone listening right now who is like, wow, she is speaking to me. I didn't realize. Could you just give them a gift of like, where could they start? What could they do? And of course, I'm going to let you also tell them where they can find you. But people sometimes are skeptical of, oh, they're just trying to sell me something. So what could you generously just give to our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I was thinking about right beforehand. So
Mhm.
I'd love to offer a meditation, a meditation visualization to your listeners that is meant to start the process of rewiring this again from the vantage point of this is affecting you and your communities and your lineage, right? Um,
Mhm.
I'd love to offer that to your audience.
Oh, that's amazing. I wasn't even expecting you to be that generous. I just thought you were going to give a tip. Like one of the things I do is I meditate regularly or
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, that is what I do, right? Because it's a constant experience of reprogramming. I've gone through multiple rounds of this, and each time it surprises me because we forget the nature of living in this sort of societal gaslighting smokescreen thing that is always trying to convince us that we're unworthy, is that you always have to keep reprogramming yourself and finding communities and finding support and finding guidance and finding tools to continue that process, right? And you'll feel the difference as you go. And as long as you keep going, that will stabilize more and more and more.
for some people, this is a weird tangent, but some people are nervous for lots. You were talking about how we pick up things. I really believe that like the gaslighting that you're describing, that we just pick it up out of society. I don't, my experience is it's not people that are intentionally trying to cause harm. It's that we have this cyclical pattern, we keep picking it up. So some people are nervous about meditating. And
Mm,
you're going to offer this generous gift, which I'm going to have to make sure that we right, give that to everybody listening. So I'll let you know how you can get that at the end.
yeah.
Um, but how do you describe this to somebody who might be a little nervous or think it's not a safe space or it seems weird or woo-woo?
Good
How do you
question.
explain it?
So first I validate, right? I validate the person's concerns. I say you need to do what's best for you and listen to yourself because we've been trained to not listen to ourselves, to not listen to our impulses, right? Listen to yourself. Take that time to sort of check in with your body's impulses, check in with your heart, check in with your body, test it out, right? Because we were given discernment for a reason. We were given critical thinking for a reason, right? Use it. We were given intuition for a reason as well. We've been trained out of it. You can start to learn how to use it again, right? So then you test things out, you dip a toe in, you listen to your comfort level, you check to see how do I feel? Does this feel in alignment with myself? Do I feel safe? Do I feel safe? Do I feel safe? Do I feel safe? And then if you feel safe with it and if it's calling you and you feel excited, but a grounded form of excitement, most especially I would say listen to that grounded excitement,
Yeah.
then you can dip into it because it's so important for us to listen to ourselves again. We've stopped listening to ourselves. We've stopped listening to the stars and the planet and the
Yeah.
everything.
I
We have
heard it described in a book about the voice that we have that's talking all the time. Some people are aware of it, some people are not aware of it, but in a book they were describing it as like it's your best friend because you listen to it all the time and you hear it all the time. And imagine that you were sitting on the couch and you were trying to watch a movie together and it just always had something to say.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so for me, that really painted the picture where I still love the whatever that is, like they're still my best friend, but I can be like, yeah, I hear you. Let's do this instead for right now. It was a really comical way for me to be able to, but I agree with you that the practice of, being able to hear the things that we're saying to ourselves that are unkind, that alone is like night and day. And
yeah,
for myself, I don't say, don't say that. Like one of my tricks is I'm curious about it. I'm compassionate to what I notice that I hear myself say.
yeah,
I even have this little thing and I'm like, oh, I love you, cinnamon. But then I'm playful too. Like I'll tell myself like, you got this,
yeah,
and it can be a loving, supportive way. Do you have any, like when you're rewriting and you strengthen this muscle, as I like to describe it, what
yeah.
kind of self-talk do you have?
Yeah. So it reminded me of a few different things that
Mhm.
I did and have done, right? So one is it's helpful to see it outside of yourself. So if you write it out, then you can sort of see it. Or I highly recommend this.
Yes.
Yourself on camera. Just grab your phone, start
Scary.
recording, speak, yeah, and then notice how you feel. Can you make eye contact with yourself? Can you just be with you? And this is for no one else. You're not going to post this on social media. This is just for you, right? And then just notice it as little judgment as possible, taking a look at how you talk to yourself, and then see how you feel at the end of the year. After you do some digging into yourself and digging into your relationship with yourself, grab your camera, talk to yourself again, and see the difference. See if you can make eye contact. See if you can have compassion for yourself. See if you notice less the things that you think are imperfections in yourself. That's a sign of progress. That's a sign that you have shifted something in your relationship to yourself. And the other thing that I wanted to say, one of the other things that I have done is ask yourself who benefits from my having this not great relationship to myself and who doesn't benefit, right? What is it stopping me from doing for myself, for others, and who benefits and doesn't benefit from that?
So those of you who are listening, I just want to tell you that if you're not in the personal development world and you haven't seen therapists for years and she is giving you so much valuable information right now, like mic drop. This is really pay attention to it. That it's amazing advice. I know from my personal experience too, Amparo, it is to be able, and I just call them different things, right? I call it like the story that you're telling yourself and who benefits and to separate, there's cost and rewards that we get. But like, I didn't think of it as, I never would have thought of like recording myself, but I do journal. There's something so powerful about getting it out of your head because we believe it. If we're just telling ourselves we believe it, and when you get it out there and you're listening to it, or you're seeing it written out, or some people use like artistic therapy, you can use artistic mediums to express it. There's so many ways to get it out of there.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. That was so generous for what you gave people listening, that I think that that's something that they can get zero strings attached. Now we're going to wrap it up. So please tell our listeners, how can they find you?
Yes, absolutely. So my two businesses are connected to each other. So if you go to www.astekah.com, it's spelled Astekah.com. And there you'll find Astekah and you can find BIPOC-CX through there as well.
Awesome. And they can connect with you as a coach, correct? They
Yes.
can do some programs that you have pre-developed programs. Is that correct?
Yes, I actually have a group coaching program that's launching in March as part of Astekah. And yes, they can sign up to receive more information about that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you all of you who are listening with us again for joining for another inspiring episode of World Changemaker podcast. If you could do us the favor of liking, please do follow the link and get the gift that Amparo offered us for her meditation. That's so generous. We did not set that up ahead of time. So you could already tell your big heart. I just appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.